Hi, friends. How are you today? It's Karen. I'm here with another edition of the Oldish TV. And for the past week or so, we've been talking about happiness. And I want to carry that on just a little bit with a discussion about something that I read about in a magazine and wanted to share with you because it does affect happiness. And that is the idea of rest. Now, first of all, I'm going to give full credit to Abilities Magazine because that's where I saw this article about rest. And in the article, 7 different kinds of rest were identified. I think I hadn't really thought about 7 different kinds. So when I was reading the article and learning about this, I knew I had to share it with you. So let's get started. The first one is one that we will all be very familiar with, physical rest. And whether that is passive rest, like sleeping or napping, or active rest. Did you know there was such a thing? Active rest, such as yoga or stretching, the kinds of things that help you circulate blood in your body, that help your body be more flexible. These are the kinds of things that are included with physical rest. That makes sense to me. If you get all tight and taut in your day, however that might go for you, being able to have a little bit of a session where you stretch or do an exercise like yoga or Tai Chi does help your body rest. So that is physical rest. Another obvious one is mental rest. We all need mental rest. So using techniques like frequent short breaks throughout the day, or perhaps keeping a notepad by your bed to jot ideas down. I'm going to be honest with you, and I've shared this with you before. I keep my phone by my bed, and if I come up with an idea in the middle of the night, something that I just need to get off of my mind, I'll tell Siri. I have to say it very quietly or else she'll hear me. Siri, you may have Google or Alexa, whatever you have, you just call out to them and tell them to save you a note. And just the downloading of that from my brain anyway onto something that I know is safe and secure, and I can go back and look at it the next morning or later in the day, whatever it happens to be. That gives my mind a break from the strain of knowing that I have to remember this thing and being afraid that I'm going to forget it. So that's a really good idea. A kind of rest that we have been hearing about a lot lately is sensory rest. And so that is the idea that you turn the screens off at a certain point before bedtime, be it an hour or 2 hours, and no TVs or computers or smartphones. I know, bad me, in the bedroom. Those kinds of things give you sensory rest. So if you give yourself a rest during the daytime by just sort of sitting back in your chair or your couch, wherever you happen to be, and close your eyes. Don't go to sleep. This isn't a nap. This is just giving your eyes a break from whatever is in front of you and has been there. So, that sort of occasional resting of the eyes without napping gives you a bit of sensory rest. Now, they also note in the article that intentional sensory deprivation can start bit by bit to fix the overstimulation that we all get throughout every day. I feel too, especially these days, especially the last year and a half or 2 years, giving myself a rest from the news on TV, the constant chatter of the world. So much of it is negative. And as I process this in my mind, those mind discussions have a way of carrying on much longer than I really intended. So I do find that turning the news off benefits me a lot. And I'm quite a news hound. I have always been very addicted to news on television, news on the computer, newspapers, just getting the news and working through the bits and pieces. And I'm really understanding more and more how that is not benefiting me. So that's a really good thing. The fourth type of rest is creative rest. For those of us who spend our days solving problems and coming up with new ideas, this is a really good kind of rest to have. And the creative rest that you give your mind is actually suggested to be dipping into creativity. So, listening to music, exposing yourself to art, perhaps having artwork in your workspace that gives you pleasure, and taking the time to actually look at it and study it, or in the case of music, listen to it. Going outside for a walk, into nature, because nature is ever changing. And if you try to see things that you've never seen before, you will, especially this time of year. I have so many friends and acquaintances on Facebook who are constantly publishing posts that have pictures of their gardens blooming or the fox that they've all been watching in the neighborhood or the baby birds. Those kinds of things give your mind a really interesting rest and help you to see the world in a different way. The fifth type of rest is emotional rest. I find this one particularly important. Women especially have been raised to be people pleasers. Men can fall into that trap too. So, guys, you don't get off the hook on this one. But, giving ourselves the time to step back from doing what others expect and doing what will make others happy is a rest for us. Now, at the very least, learning not to say yes quite as quickly as we do. Somebody asks something of us and we say, oh, sure, I can do that. Yes, I'll take that on. Learning to just take a beat and say, let me give that some consideration. Let me check my calendar. Gives you a bit of breathing space to assess whether or not that task is appropriate for you, really fits into your life, will cause you too much stress in one area of your life that you don't need, or won't give you the rest that you need in another area of life. At the very least, you can decide whether adding this to your schedule is something that will benefit your time with your partner, your time with your children or your grandchildren. So it's as much learning not to take time away from the things that give you pleasure as it is learning to understand the difference between the things that people ask of you that give you pleasure or that make you feel like you're obligated. Do you understand? Okay. Social rest. We all have people around us that feed us and relationships that don't, that take energy from us. So, having that social rest, intentionally having people around you who are positive and uplifting, and spending less time with people who are negative, who are doom and gloom, and take positivity away from us. We all know people like that. And many of us have gone through a period of backing away from people in our lives that take energy from us and don't add to us. You know that old sales adage that you spend 80% of your time dealing with 20% of your customers? You can spend 80% of your emotional time dealing with 20% of your friends who are negative, negative, negative. And that 80% of your time is what you want to try to cut down so that you end up spending 80% of your time with things and people who make you truly happy and fulfilled. Last but not least is spiritual rest. Now, whether you are the sort of person who needs to feel those kinds of connections to a greater extent than some others, I think this is something that we can all benefit from. Encouraging that deeper sense of belonging and connecting and purpose in our lives. We've talked a lot about purpose here and having a purpose. having a purpose that makes us happy and be fulfilled. Some of you may find that deeper connection through prayer, others through meditation, others through volunteer activities in your community. I know that many of you have written to talk about the satisfaction you feel with the volunteer activities that you have, working on a project that just fills your soul, feeds you, as opposed to takes away from you. So there are the 7 kinds of rest that each and every one of us needs. And I hope that this is something that you will maybe listen to and then maybe go back to and listen again and make sure that you are having all 7 of those kinds of rest in your life, not just today, but every day. Until next Wednesday at 12 noon, I bid you adieu, and I hope that you will take care of one another, take care of yourselves, take care of one another in your own family and in your immediate friend circle, the people who feed you. Please do remember that it takes a village to age a senior. Bye, everyone.